It's really kind of a ridiculous task, preaching on Easter. I mean, what do you say? We saw him get killed. He was dead, dead, dead. We know people, I mean, they wrote it down. We've heard the story a million times, who buried the guy in the grave. Stone, big heavy stone, can't move it by yourself kind of stone, rolled over the grave. I mean, what do you say? So the next day some folks show up, the stone's rolled away, there are angels in the cave where Jesus once lay. My man is risen. What the heck do you say? Jesus didn't even know what to say. No, I think he was kind of like, I think he knew, but then he was also surprised. You ever know something and then you're surprised even when it happens? I mean, look at what he says to Mary. Yeah, you do. You're with me. Thank you, Mr. Millward. Mr. Millward's with me. Think about what he said to Mary. So Mary shows up at a funeral crying because she saw the person die. Now, if you show up at a funeral crying, you're there because somebody's dead, right? So if you show up and the person who you thought was dead is now not dead, someone should explain that to you, don't you think? Jesus doesn't do that to Mary. I don't think he knows what to say. So he tries to play a joke on her. He says he knows why she's crying. Why is she crying? Because he's dead. I mean, he says, hey, I think he tried not to laugh. You know, he's like, you ever try to pull a joke? Like, he tried not to, he was like, why are you crying? It didn't go over well. So then he said what you say. Then he said what you say in that most tender moment. Like, what's the thing you most want to hear? You most want to hear the one who loves you call your name. Joyce, Emily, Peter, Scott, Eric, Jill, Alexa. You most want to know that someone knows your name. So he said, Mary, I'm here. He is risen. Now, a smarter preacher than me would stop right there. But I have never, ever claimed to be a smart man, much less a smart preacher. So I'm going to go on and say this. What I most want you to hear after the sound of your own name is that you didn't do anything wrong. That's the Easter message for today. You didn't do anything wrong. You don't have any idea what I'm talking about when I say that, but even still, it gives you kind of a little bit of a relief, doesn't it? I see some spouses and partners sort of elbowing the person next to them and saying, see, he said I didn't do anything wrong. But it's true. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm telling you that on Easter Day because there's an old story out there. It's something of a theological rumor that's been alive for too long. And today we're going to bury it. The rumor is that Easter happened because God is mad at us, because we all did something wrong. To put a finer point on it, the rumor goes actually back to our greatest great-great-grandparents, a fellow named Adam, girl named Eve. Apparently, rumor is they did something wrong. God is mad at us, wanted to kill us, but he killed his son instead. That's not true. We're going to stop telling that strange story about an odd, passive-aggressive, grudge-holding God. Here's the truth. You didn't do anything wrong. Jesus wasn't born because you did something wrong. Jesus didn't die because you did something wrong. And Jesus darn sure wasn't raised from the dead because you did something wrong. That doesn't even make any sense. We all know this. God is love. You are God's favorite thing. You're God's favorite son, God's favorite daughter. You are God's beloved child. What's more, your deepest you is God. Here's how I sum it up. God is your biggest fan. The Easter message is that God is fired up. He's more excited than I am that you're alive. And He wants you to know in no uncertain terms. This is why that old tomb was emptied out, because God wants you to know in no uncertain terms that your life, your actual life, is for joy. It's an adventure for joy. And love is stronger than death every day of the week. That's why Easter happened. I mean, think about it. If you think about it, it all makes sense. So I got a question for you as we sort of unpack this. Did anybody in this room choose to be born? Like before you were born, was there a moment where you're like, I got a choice here. I can be born or not be born. Anybody choose to be born? Of course not. You were born here without your consent. You were born on this particular planet. Nobody asked you about if you wanted to live in this particular galaxy, in this very old universe. No. You're here. You were born here. And this friction-filled life is all you've ever known. I'll tell you something else. You know this. Life around here is not exactly a walk in the park, is it? Is anybody just breezing through every day that you're alive, just like, oh God, this is no problem. Everything goes my way. Anybody? This is real human beings in this room, right? Life is not exactly a walk in the park. I think it's darn hard to be a living, breathing human being. To be totally honest with you, I'm totally amazed any of us are even here. Did y'all see all those kids out in the Easter egg hunt? You see all the kids that went to Children's Chapel? Y'all know those kids didn't get here by themselves, right? There's a whole passel of adult parents in this town who deserve a round of applause for getting their kids up out of bed. It's not easy, is it? Getting their kids up out of bed, putting something presentable on them, and bringing them down to the church. It's hard for me sometimes just getting out of the house. And what's more, everybody I know is doing the best they can with what they have to work with. And there's a whole bunch of us ain't got much to work with. And so sometimes we mess up. Does that resonate with anybody? Anybody in this room messed up lately? Sometimes we mess up. In fact, the very disciples of Jesus are famous for messing up. They're actually best known for messing up. And you know what Jesus is known for? Not giving them a hard time for messing up. There's not a place in the gospel where He gathers them all together in one place, wags His finger at them, and chastises them for all the ways they've messed up. In fact, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. When Jesus does get all His friends together after the resurrection, the first words out of His mouth to them, after my man came back from the dead, y'all remember what He said? Peace. He said, peace be with you. He didn't say, now, does everybody understand what they did wrong? No, He says, I love you. I can't get enough of you. Peace be with you. See, the Easter message is that God in Jesus Christ has come to be with us. It's a love affair, y'all. He can't get enough of us. And He has this sense that life is hard. So He wants to be with us, to live it with us, to point out the way to the highway of love, which is the only groove to be in. Now, the reason I know these things about Jesus and Easter is because I've learned these things from people in my life who practice Easter as a way of life. So let me put it on the street. A couple of weeks ago, I was feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. I had one of these, you ever have this day or days or weeks or, good God, a month, where life just is coming at you from every angle? Every 360 all around, life is piling on you. Do you know what I'm talking about? So on this particular day, I let it all pile up on me. A lot of times I can kind of deflect and not sort of get it all attached to me, but on this particular day, all of this overwhelm piled on me, and I just carried it around. I had so much of it that I went and got a wheelbarrow and put some of it in there so I could carry it easier. And then I did something. I did something I shouldn't have done. I carted it all home with me. I took all of that stress and all of that overwhelm at the end of a long day home with me. And I didn't do it on purpose. I accidentally projected. Do y'all know this word projected? If you don't, oh Lord. I accidentally projected all of this stress onto my sweet, sweet wife. This is the person I love the most. I adore her. Most days I can't stop thinking about her. And that day I took home a wheelbarrow load of my own stressed out mess, and I accidentally projected it onto her. And when I realized what I had done, you ever realize what you've done and just want to shrink down and disappear? When I realized what I had done, which I'm going to confess to you was not that night, it was the next morning. I wake up early in the morning and I start writing. Journaling is a spiritual practice. Some of you may have it. I start writing, and sometimes the practice is just all the things I did wrong the day before. And I started writing, and when I was writing about the day before, I realized what I was done, and I was embarrassed, and I was mortified, and I sprang up from my chair, and I apologized, and I apologized, and I apologized, and I said, I'm an idiot. You have married an absolute fool. And I projected all of that overwhelm onto you, and I am so sorry. And do you know what this woman said to me? Oh, man. She said, thanks. And then, do you know what she said to me? She said, I love you. And I'm your biggest fan. Always will be. And when she said that to me, the top of my head blew off, and my heart swelled to bursting. And I thought to myself, no, I didn't think it, I felt it. I thought, that's Easter. That is resurrection, practiced in living color. Love is stronger than death. I got another one. Years ago, I knew a little girl. Years ago, I knew a little girl who struggled in school. This little girl was in the first grade, maybe about 6, 7 years old. And this little girl I used to know, she couldn't sit still in her seat all day long like all the other little kids in her classroom could sit still in their seats. And her teacher did a thing. You see, her teacher did a thing. Her teacher told this little girl that she was doing school all wrong. Wrong, she said, wrong. And so to correct the behavior, the teacher separated the little girl's desk from all the other kids in that classroom, and she put the little girl and her desk in a distant corner of the big room, and then she started grading the behavior of the little girl on a scale of 1 to 10. And she sent a note home with the score. With the little girl's score. She sent a note home with the little girl's score every day so her parents could see it. And the little girl got a 2 on the first day. And then the little girl got a 2 on the second day. And then the little girl got a 1 on the third day. And then on the 4th day, she's back up to a 2. 5th day, 2. 6th day, 2. 7th day, 2. And 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Long line of 2s into the distant horizon. 2 was the groove she was stuck in, and she couldn't get out. And I heard about this, and I was very, very sad for the little girl. And I didn't know what to do to help her. And I don't want to spend a second or waste a breath demonizing the little girl's teacher, because the little girl's teacher was doing the best that she could with what she had to work with, and a lot of times folks ain't much got to weigh, don't have a lot to work with. Sometimes when you're overwhelmed, rather than take it all home and project it onto somebody, you call a friend, you know. That's the best way to go. And so when I was really sorrowing over the little girl and the 2s and the separated desk, I went to see a buddy of mine. His name is Charlie. I went to tell him about this story about this little girl one afternoon. And Charlie listened to me. Wise people will listen to you, and they'll stay quiet for a while before they answer you. He listened to the story of the little girl and all the 2s and the separated desk, and he was quiet. And he was quiet some more. And then he spoke. And when he spoke, he said this. He said, gosh, Hendree, I've been thinking about it as you've told me this story here, and I can't see how this little girl's done anything wrong. He said, come to think of it, I can't sit still all day long either, and I'm grown. Then he said, what really strikes me? And this is what I always remembered about what he said. This is a long time ago. He said, what really strikes me is this sense I have as you tell this story, that no one should receive a daily grade. Then he smiled and he said, who could stand up under that kind of pressure? Then he said to me, he said, could you? He said, boy, I sure couldn't. He said, I'll tell you what I'd do. He said, if I was in this little girl's life, I'll tell you what I'd do. He said, I'd ignore that score every day when it came home, like ignoring that score was my spiritual practice. And then I'd tell that little girl every chance I got that I was her absolute biggest fan. That I was her biggest fan. That little girl's mom, went to the school after that, and she said, listen, y'all do what you got to do, but I don't need a daily score. Life's hard enough as it is. Little girls grow up. I don't know if y'all knew that. Little girls grow on up, and that little girl grew on up to be a young woman. And you ever hear about folks like you don't hear about them, and then somebody says, oh, you remember that little girl? Well, so this little girl grew up into a young woman. And sometimes I hear about how she's doing out in the world. And not long ago, somebody reached out to me to tell me about how this little girl was doing. And they told me that the little girl, now grown up into a young woman, has developed the most remarkable gift. You know what it is, don't you? Developed the most remarkable gift for helping little kids who can't sit still. To work magic with them. Work absolute magic with them. And this person said to me when they were telling me about this gift, they said 3 times, this is so funny, they said, wow. They said it again, wow. And then a 3rd time, like it was Easter morning or something, this person said, wow. Then this person said, she is seriously amazing. I'm her biggest fan. I'm her biggest fan. And when I heard that story, the top of my head blew clean off. And my heart, it grew to bursting. And I thought to myself, that's it. That's Easter. That's Easter practiced in real life. That's an actual story about actual human beings and the practice of resurrection. Love really is stronger than death. That's Easter. You see, Jesus came because God is your biggest fan. Jesus came because God, I'm going to say it, God is head over heels in love with you. God cannot get enough of you. Life is hard. God knows that, and He wants to do it with us. You see, the resurrection, y'all come on, the resurrection is not solving the problem of God's anger. The resurrection is the demonstration of the absolute power of God's love. So I'll end like this. I had this wild thought. Like, what if there was a graffiti artist on the scene when Jesus was raised from the dead? I mean, they're around. And had a spray paint can and spray painted something on the wall of Jesus' tomb after my man resurrected from the dead. What would a graffiti artist spray inside the empty cave of the tomb of Jesus after he'd been raised from the dead? And I came up with what it would say. I think you'd walk right into the tomb and in big, sort of defiant letters, spray painted on the wall, it would say, "You didn't do anything wrong!" Exclamation point, smiley face. Then underneath that, it would say in big, like maybe purple or something, like, "Love is stronger than death." And then spray painted under that would be, "I'm your biggest fan. Always will be. Love is all, comma, God." you didn't do anything wrong. Amen.